Hello everyone, and welcome to this Food and Drink Tech Hub webinar on digitalisation and the new technology advice service. My name is Alistair Trail, and I am a Principal Food and Enterprise Consultant at SEC Consulting. And for the last couple of years, we've been delivering the Food and Drink Tech Hub business support service, now known as one of the 5 new strands called networks and events. Just before we start, I'll just ask you to put your microphones on mute, but leave your cameras on, and there will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the session. So please just put your mics on or switch your hand up and we'll get questions. Today's webinar is on digitalisation and the new technology advice service and the grant support that's offered by the Tech Hub. But before I hand over to Iqbal and Intelligence Consulting, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of the Tech Hub and the 4 new strands of support that is available. So the Tech Hub has been going for the last couple of years and has now been redesigned to offer 5 strands of support. The first strand is the networking and event strand, which we've been delivering for the last couple of years at SEC Consulting. And this is a fully funded program of activity designed to help food and drink producers and supply chain businesses in the Highlands Council area to develop and grow and to try and reach your full potential. We offer a series of workshops, events, webinars, one-to-one support, common interest groups, innovation clinics and so forth to try and help businesses to overcome technical challenges and grow. We have 4 new strands that we've just started. The first one of these is the Net Zero Mobilisation strand, which is a year-long intensive support program for food and drink businesses working towards developing a net zero action plan. This has a cost of £250 per business, but it's valued a lot more than that. And the deadline for expressions of interest for this program is the 31st of January. So if you are interested in that, please go on the Tech Hub website and put your expression of interest in. There's also the Technology Advice strand, which supports businesses looking at new technology to improve their productivity, to reduce their carbon emissions. This is what the webinar is going to talk about today, so there'll be a lot more information on that as we go. They also have the complementary capital grants, which is offering financial assistance to businesses looking to introduce a step change to the food and drink organisation by implementing new technologies. So grants can be between 10 and 40% and cover 10 and 40% of total project costs, and these are available. This can increase up to 50% where the businesses are based in a more remote or rural area or has been on training for less than 5 years. And it's also at the bottom there, we have our training grant service, which offers funding and support to upskill or embed skills in your workforce in the use of new technologies and maximize opportunity that new technology and data innovation offers. And the funding is up to £3,000 and can cover 70% of training costs. So as I said, we've been delivering the Food and Drink Tech Hub, the networks and events service for the last 3 years, just so we come to the end of the 3-year program, but I've been given an additional year to work with businesses in the Highland Council area to support the development of food and drink producers and supply chain businesses. Talk about supply chain business, that can be anybody from primary producers all the way up to the food service and retail. And businesses outside the Highland Council area can participate in the workshops and the events, but the one-to-one delivery is only for businesses in that Highland Council area. So the program started in summer 2022, focused on opportunities for technology adoption and innovation, and now covers things like trying to help businesses develop their growth plans, raise awareness of some of the other support that's available, new technologies and opportunities such as digital, and trying to develop collaboration between the private and public sector to try and increase that innovation in the food and drink sector. These are the type of support they've been offering over the last few years and will continue to offer. So everything from product development, packaging and product labeling, food safety, we do a lot of work on sustainability, low carbon and waste management, branding, marketing, business planning, e-commerce, and some information as well and support on equipment, technical troubleshooting, factory layout. You can find more about our service and the other 4 strands at the Tech Hub website. And we've also got access to some previous podcasts and webinars. So before I introduce Iqbal and start the actual webinar, I just want to say this is the format how we provide support to food and drink businesses through our network and event strand. So basically, business can get in touch through the website. We can have a support call with them, and then we can highlight that we can send them to the right strand. If that's ourselves, they can attend the workshops and webinars, or they can get access to the support that's available on the right-hand side there, which includes innovation clinics, which are 20-minute sessions with a panel of experts and offers one-to-one support. Common interest groups, which is about bringing companies together from the same subset to the same geographical area. They come together to overcome a challenge, or intensive one-to-one support, where you get 3 days of support from a specialist. And we also offer learning journeys. And we also have our podcast as well, which is now onto episode 11, and you can find that in your usual channels where you get your podcasts, which I think some of these are a really good listen. So that's me. I will now stop sharing my screen and introduce Iqbal from Intelligence Consulting, who can take you into the webinar. Thank you.
Okay, so hello everyone and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. My name is Iqbal Bedi and I head up Intelligence Consulting. We're a telecoms, digital and technology consultancy. We primarily work with a range of clients, public sector and small to medium-sized businesses. Last year, for example, we advised around 20 small businesses on adopting digital technology to enhance their business outcomes. And with me today, you'll be pleased to know it's not just my Glasgow monotone. I have Lorna and Reese. Lorna is a consultant and works with Intelligence Consulting, and Reese is a specialist food and drink consultant who brings deep sector expertise. And later on, we have a special guest, Steve West, who is from the Pudding Compartment. It's a North Wales-based business, and he'll be speaking about his experience in driving digital transformation within that business. So do stay tuned for that. It'll be really exciting to listen to what Steve has to say from a real world context. In terms of today's agenda, we have, first of all, a quick introduction to the program support by myself, and then Reese will take over and talk through some of the basics of what digital technology means within the food and drink sector, and then what impact those technologies can have with your businesses. And I'll take over again and talk on a couple of case studies from real world examples where we've provided advice to food and drink businesses, particularly those within rural locations, and how we've proposed that they use technology to improve business outcomes. And then we'll finish off with Steve, the Pudding Compartment. As I said, he's an expert on this area, and he'll talk about the latest trends and innovations that they've been using within their business to drive innovation and drive digitalisation to improve their outcomes. And finally, Lorna will talk around the application process, your eligibility and who can apply, and then we'll have a final session on a Q&A towards the end. So please do kind of either write your Q&A within the chat or keep them towards the end where you can ask your questions. But if you are shy, just drop them in the chat and we'll take those questions from there. So we'll get started without any further hold up. So this is, as Alistair mentioned, this is a very specific specialist food and drink advice service, particularly to businesses within the Highland Council area who are looking to implement new technology within their business to either achieve improved productivity, improved revenue, reduce costs, or perhaps to reduce their business carbon emissions. The service we're offering includes up to 10 days of one-to-one advice to help your business, if you are successful and if you apply, to identify how technology can help you to address a very specific challenge or an opportunity. We're targeting 35 businesses, so places are limited. So if by the end of today you do think that this is something you would like to get involved in, then do follow the application process. At the end of the service, at the end of the kind of 10 days or whatever, how many days we decide you need in terms of support, you'll receive what we call a technology adoption plan. A technology adoption plan is written in plain English, but it gives you guidance around all the costs that we think that potential solutions, potential solution providers, and an implementation plan to help you digitize your business. You can then potentially, based on some of the other grants that Alistair spoke about, apply for grant funding towards the costs of implementing those recommendations we make in the technology adoption plan, and that also includes training as well. Our support is fully funded, so you do not have to pay anything for our advice. It's fully funded by Highlands and Islands Enterprise. And it's also important to say there's, apart from the initial time that we spend with you, which might be, 1 or 2 days virtually, or maybe 1 or 2 days on site, or even half days or a couple of hours here and there, there's no significant investment of your time. So, in terms of your investment, you do get a lot back from this. So I would really encourage you to apply if this is of interest. Okay, over to you, Rhys.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I assume that from my name and from my accent that you can guess that I'm not Scottish, but I am a fellow Celt. I guess you're not usually used to Welshmen coming up to Scotland for a couple of weeks yet until the Six Nations starts, but we'll give you a little prelim so you can get used to us for this year. So yeah, let's start with the policy or the governmental side of things. Scotland's government does have a commitment to net zero by 2045, and digital has definitely got a role to play there in delivering that. To the same ilk, the UK government is encouraging the use of technology for growth and looking at increased efficiency through the use of digital technology. From the point of view of the environment, then, if we look at customers, your customers and the retailers that buy your products, they're very often or increasingly looking for those environmental improvements in the processes that you use. And in utilizing digital technology can deliver some of this for you. We all know about the issues around business costs recently. Inflation and food inflation in particular has been a massive issue, but also we've seen, or we will see, I believe in April, national insurance increases being introduced, the increase in the living wage as well, or the living wage rate is going to increase. We've all had to suffer because of energy cost increases and raw material inflation, and digital can definitely help in minimizing some of these increases, especially when it comes to looking at the workforce. You're in a rural area, as I am here in North Wales. We see an increasing issue. Or an increasing shortage of labour. We've got an ageing workforce, so maybe less physical capability to do stuff, and a loss of skills. And again, there's a role that digital can play in helping to that area. Next slide, please, Iqbal. So what can digital do for you, I guess, is the big question. So improve productivity, helping with staff efficiency and work schedules, and eliminating those repetitive tasks, reduce changeover time in your processes, less waste. And I think we'll be touching on waste several times here, because reducing waste is clearly a way to be more efficient. We hear a lot about AI being used increasingly in food production. I recently was involved in a scheme with a bakery where they were using AI to improve accuracy in their ordering systems, which again meant less waste. Cost efficiency, monitoring things like energy use, monitoring heating and cooling processes to make sure that the right kind of right level of energy is used and there's no wastage here. Again, human error can mean a lot of waste, so reducing that. And then increased revenue, or maybe I should say here, maintaining your margins. So it's pretty difficult at the moment to maintain margins when the costs of raw materials and the processes are rising, and therefore it's key if you want to increase or maintain your margins without increasing your prices, then there's a lot of scope for digital, whether that's ERP systems, supply chain management solutions, or inventory management solutions, and then data. It's all about data. So it's about getting better data collection and consistently collected data so that better decisions can be made. I was recently working with a pie company in South Wales, and they were using digital monitoring to increase the amount of preventative maintenance they were doing. They were able to note that certain machines were breaking down at regular intervals, and they used the data they collected to make sure that the maintenance was done before those machines broke down, which helped them a great deal. Next slide, please, Iqbal. And then, if we're looking at what can digital bring to you. So in terms of automation, and Steve will talk or maybe touch a little bit about this, the use of robotics, cobotics as well. So, cobotics, we talked about the issues with an aging workforce, a less physically able workforce. Then the use of cobotics is a really good solution there. We mentioned also the use of AI for maintenance and quality control. Data analytics, so the Internet of Things sensors, the real-time monitoring of production, using big data to make sure that your supply chain, your inventory management, and your enterprise runs as smoothly and efficiently as possible. Then we can look at smart manufacturing, so virtual replicas of production lines. So before you invest some really big bucks in putting new production lines, you can build virtual replicas to see if they actually do work and make sense. 3D printing is another thing that's growing in use as well. So things like actually 3D printing the product or custom packaging. So again, there's less wastage. With sustainability, the use of blockchain to trace your ingredients, and to look at energy management systems, and then with customer engagement finally, looking at automated ordering and fulfillment, EDI feeds from web sales, the use of mobile applications, and the use of social media for marketing and direct feedback. That covers me off, I believe, Iqbal.
Thanks, Rhys. I'll take it from here. So just to bring some of those technologies to life, and what does that mean in a kind of real situation? So we've picked out a couple of case studies based on those 20 SMEs we advised last year around the food and drink industry. So this first example is a food production company that specializes in meat, bacon, and sausage production. They're a small-sized company, but they supply major stores nationally around England and Wales. If you can imagine, a kind of gym hall-sized room that's got a number of assembly machines, sausage machines, and bacon machines running, that environment has to be kept quite cool. And it's also quite noisy. So there are 2 or 3 challenges that they outlined to us when we kind of initially met them. The first was that they have to do frequent manual temperature checks of the production area, but also within the freezer and storage area, just to make sure they're complying with food safety guidelines around temperature, working temperature of meat products. And the second one was because they are using quite a lot of heavy-duty machinery to grind and produce the sausage and bacon. There's quite a lot of high energy usage. Now, they'd invested quite significantly in solar power, but they're still keen to reduce the energy usage and isolate high usage machines so they can perhaps in the future try and understand how they can minimize energy usage even further to support their net zero ambitions. And the third challenge there was just given the amount of machinery involved in that place, there was a lot of noise. So again, regulations around noise, they had to monitor the noise quite regularly and just make sure they're not breaching any of those regulations. So once we met with them, we went through a whole list of issues and challenges. There were the 3 that we kind of fine-tuned for them and kind of said these are the ones that will have the most impact. We proposed a number of solutions but mostly based on what we call IoT or Internet of Things technology solutions. Now, these are sensors that can do lots of different things, different sensors for different things, but it uses the same technology platform, so you don't need to implement multiple layers of technology. But the first recommendation was to deploy IoT sensors that sit in the room that can detect and report on the room temperature, for example. Now, that could be the same technology can be placed in fridges and freezers, and can be placed in the operating room where they're producing the sausages and manufacturing the bacon. And that can then be reported on a single dashboard, and it can take action if the temperature strays out of a particular tolerance of the room or the fridge or freezer. Different sensors, but using the same technology, can also be deployed to measure noise. And if the noise exceeds a certain decibel, that can also flag alerts on a system, and then you can take action to either shut down the machinery that might be faulty or just take steps in the future to reduce the noise levels. And also deploying sensors along some of the kind of high usage machinery, again, to try and really understand, which machines are using the most energy and if they're energy efficient, but also are they complying with what the spec initially said, so they're using more energy or less. That might indicate a fault, or it might just also indicate aging machinery, so they can take action from that point of view. So that recommendation went to them in terms of a technology adoption report, and we estimate just through better energy management, and that's through monitoring the temperature in the rooms, making sure they're not overcooling the rooms. We estimate roughly about £5,000 per annum saving just through better energy management, and that was a small percentage drop in the current energy savings. And that was just by a very quick high-level review of their operations. But also manually, it saved them a lot of manual time. Every hour, I think they have to take manual temperature checks and noise checks. So just that kind of manual temperature check can take hours through a week, but just it releases that productivity and releases that staff member to do something a bit more meaningful. So again, there's a lot of kind of replacing those kind of manual processes through IoT and technology sensors. The next example here is a salt production company. Now, if you can imagine a school classroom-based or classroom-sized room, and a kind of production vats are kind of size of your kitchen sink, maybe slightly larger, but containing a mix of sea salt, brine, about 8 to 10 of them in a single room. So this salt producer has a room that size and a number of these vats, and above each kind of vat there was a manual temperature or a heater, I would say, that would heat the water to a certain temperature over a certain time, evaporate the liquid, and leave behind, as we all learned in school in primary, that would leave behind the salt crystals, and that would then be used to as part of the kind of the salt that they would sell to end users. Now, being an artisan salt producer, they didn't want to spoil the manual process, as everything has to be handled by hand, but they can certainly automate a lot of the kind of manual checking that they do at the moment. So their challenges were they do a lot of manual inspections of each of these brine vats where the salt water mixture was going. That again takes time, but depending upon the time of day, who does it, there was inconsistencies in how those inspections were made. And also they had to monitor the room temperature on quite a regular basis, not just for temperature, but also for humidity. And these conditions, the environmental conditions, the room temperature, the temperature of the heat lamps, everything combined, if you got it just right, you would maximize the optimal production of the salt. But quite often, because it's manual, it was done at intermittent times, there's no consistent measurement pattern, they weren't able to understand why on certain occasions they weren't getting that optimal production that they would expect. So, part of the solution is to help them optimize the production of the salt, but also then be able to correlate the environmental conditions with that production, so they can then start to fine tune and adjust the heat and temperature and humidity of that room, so they then can in future create the optimal conditions for salt production. So the solution there was to deliver a number of sensors, and again, a number of IoT sensors that would monitor the room temperature and humidity, and that would be automated, measured right through a 24/7, 365 period, so they can optimize and understand, over this period, the room temperature with this VAT was this much, etc. But they could also optimize the monitoring of the brine to optimize production quality. What I mean by that is they could monitor the heat that was being applied to that, but through consistently monitoring the temperature, optimize that production volume and quality, and just get the finest quality product out there. The benefits for them with that would significantly reduce manual workload by taking those manual temperature checks and therefore operational costs, allowing them to focus on more productive tasks, but ultimately would result in a more consistent product and more efficient delivery without having to do those manual checks. So a good couple of examples there. Hopefully that kind of helps you understand the kinds of things that technology can do. I'm now going to hand over to Steve. Now, just before Steve prepares the slides, this is a business that's based in Flintshire. They're a multi-million turnover business, got a number of employees, about 20 to 30 employees. Now, they've been through a bit of a journey, and without stealing Steve's thunder, I'll stop there and I will stop sharing. And Steve, over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Can I first check that you can hear me and see the slides? Because that would be a good start.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all good. Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Iqbal, and thanks for everyone who's organised this and for asking me to be part of it. It's really exciting to see what this programme offers. I've been involved in a similar programme in North Wales for the last couple of years, but there are certain elements that look like this programme includes that ours didn't, at least not initially. So it's great that it involves like some capital elements, for example, because that's always one of the blockers to actually getting started. Is understanding what sort of return you can get on your investment. So if you can get some help towards that, then that's a really good start. Okay, so yeah, my name's Steve West. I own a business called the Pudding Compartment. We're based in North Wales on the coast, and we're an SME. We employ 30 people now. We've been in business 18 years, and we've grown gradually over that period. But what's happening now is we're starting to really accelerate our growth. This year we were going to experience about a 50% growth, whereas we've generally been more like 10% growth, notwithstanding all of the COVID interruptions, etc. So yeah, I'll just start with a bit of a background, and I'll tell you a little bit about the Pudding Compartment. But I think the main purpose of this is to talk about the digital projects that we've been involved in. So that little photograph on there, I've just included a few photographs, and basically that is one of our mixes. We make cakes, obviously. So basically, over the last couple of years, when we've replaced equipment, we've typically replaced it with something that's got a digital control on it. And that's just been fortuitous, really, because what we're finding now with this project is we're now able to hook into some of those digital controls. But we've also got a whole load of older equipment, much older, 40 or 50 years old in some cases. So we're now looking at ways how we can connect to some of the older equipment as well. So yeah, they're the sort of products we make. They're not our best photographs, but you get an idea of the sort of things there. We mainly supply like coffee shops and things like that. I won't go into our history because we've only got 10 minutes, but you can see there that we've gradually expanded. We've just this week taken on another unit, so we're now up to about 1,600 square meters. So yeah, I think it's about getting on for 20,000 square feet now. Well, maybe not quite that, but moving up that way. So I'll get straight into these digital projects. Some of the stuff that was covered earlier on by Reese, we've actually been fortunate to get involved or to touch upon almost all of those elements in the last 2 years due to the project we're doing with a local research centre called the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre. So we have done things like virtual reality and process simulation, carbon footprint. Sensors is a big important thing that I'd like to spend most of my time on. I obviously got things like digital production tools and robotic lines and all this. But the first thing I'd like to really say is, like, please do not be put off by all the jargon, because the engineers like to bombard us with all of the jargon, because that is kind of the language that is used. So my first my first challenge was to overcome the jargon so I could actually understand what people were talking about. So please don't be afraid to ask and interrupt and say, AI, what's AI? Or, what do you mean? What's virtual reality? How does that apply? So don't be afraid of it, but don't be afraid to ask what it is if you need to know, would be my advice. Because I'm always quite happy to ask the dumb questions in those kind of situations because I'd rather understand it. So that's one of the things. And then the other key thing I would like to say is that there's a lot of the benefits that we've had, and we are starting to see a lot of benefits now. Some of them come from what to me were quite surprising aspects of the project, things I wasn't really expecting to give us a really big advantage as a business. We're mainly interested in paying the bills next week or next month and hopefully having a little bit of money left over. So when people start talking about targets for 2050 or whatever, it's got to be in the context of we need to be able to afford this. It needs to give us business advantages and work towards carbon zero, whatever it might be, carbon neutral. It's not, we can't afford just to spend, put loads of people into a carbon neutral project if it doesn't give us any other business help or support, cost efficiencies, that kind of thing. And you can make sure that it does both. So that's really important from my point of view. That picture on the right there, that's just a sensor. It's a testo sensor. It's got temperature and humidity on it. We've already touched on that. Now, these are the really simplest. We started just by putting these sensors in. Really low cost, really simple, and some of the biggest benefits we've had have been by putting those kind of technologies in, and it's allowed us to get confident and ready to move to the next step, if you like. So you don't have to start. In fact, I would recommend do not start with anything too complicated or an automated line or anything like that, and start with just something straightforward that you can sort of get used to, if you like. Let's go to the next slide. Oops. So I'm going to brush through some of these because these are some of the things that have been generated on this project. So we have had a digital version of our premises made. So that means we can start moving equipment around on a computer to see what impact it has. These things are really useful, but I wouldn't start off by doing this myself. But for example, it allowed us to see if we had a very long piece of equipment and we didn't know whether it would actually, where it was going to fit in. It's something we haven't bought yet. So having this allowed us to work out where it would actually fit in. So these things are definitely very valuable. But the digital twin side, that's way, way down the road as far as I'm concerned. Okay. Carbon footprinting I'd like to touch on, because that was an area I was really skeptical about. And I thought, it's almost like, well, to do this project, you've got to do your carbon footprinting as well. So I was like, I wouldn't say I was reluctant. I was interested in everything, but I didn't really appreciate how important it was. And it's now very important. So, and how it's affected us in real everyday terms is that our biggest customer, in fact, our two biggest customers, every year we have to renew with them, which means we have to have an audit from them and we have to fill all the paperwork in, etc. They are now asking us what our carbon footprint is and what our plans are to reduce that carbon footprint. So if we hadn't have done this exercise, there was the risk that we could lose our biggest customer. And that's not a retail customer, that's a food service customer. So I imagine those who supply in retail would be even hotter on this. And all I would say is it's coming down the chain. And even if your existing customers aren't interested in it or don't appear to be, they will. I'd be shocked if they weren't one day soon, kind of thing. So that was a real benefit. But actually, the other thing it allowed us to do was understand, when we understood where we found that 61% of our carbon footprint is due to our ingredients. And then within that, the biggest ones were actually fats, so it makes sense when you think about it. It was eggs and butter and things, with butter mainly, and that kind of thing. So we've been able to use this information. So we're sort of saying, okay, how can we reduce our carbon footprint but give us a business advantage at the same time? So we've done things like substituting use oil instead of butter in some recipes, and that's reduced the cost of the product, but it's also improved our carbon footprint. And some of those products, we were then able to make them vegan quite easily. That meant we could charge more for the products. So we had this situation where we've improved our carbon footprint, we're charging more for our products, but they actually cost us less to make. So that was a win-win-win sort of situation. So I'm not saying there's loads and loads of examples of that, but they are hidden within there. So it is worth sort of taking a look to see if you can find some of those things. But also put into context like our energy usage and that kind of thing, which we'll come to again shortly. So sensors we've touched on already, and to me, the two biggest things that have had an impact on us and are the two most cost-effective things, if you like, are the sensors, starting to put sensors in, and also we've got some smart scales, digital scales that talk to our computers. So in our smart bakery, as it's called on here, we've got things like, obviously you can see the rest of it where you've got mixing and then you've got an automated finish line at the end on the right-hand side. But if we just that's almost like that's the journey we're on, if you like. So we're starting off with the sensors. We've then done some digital scales. We've connected some of our machinery, including our mixers. And then the next stage after that is getting an automated line installed for some of the processes. So that's kind of what we've done. So the sensors, so temperature sensors are really cheap to install. The good thing is most of them are a system in their own right. So they have their own apps, which come with, you just pay like 50 quid a year or something like that, and you have access to the apps. Not a lot anyway. So because they were so cost effective, I went a little bit overboard, and we had them all over the place. Part of the reason for that is that at one point we had a problem where some of our products, chocolate brownie, wasn't lasting as long as, from a shelf life point of view, as we were expecting it to. It was going moldy early. Then other times it would last twice as long. So we're monitoring that now so that we've got a history now. These have been in for quite a while. So what happens with these sensors is we get the system, it's all automatic. There's no wiring involved, by the way. They've just got batteries in these things, and it's on the internet, and it's on the wireless internet system. So you can just put one sensor in if you want to, if you just got one fridge or you want to monitor or something like that. So basically, we're looking for relationships now. This is where the data starts to come in that everybody talks about. So we're looking for relationships between shelf life that we achieve and the humidity on the day we made that product, or the humidity when we stored that product, or it could be the temperature or that kind of thing. So we're starting to, so the data is gathered automatically at no cost to us because it's all electronic. And it's there for us to interrogate when we need to. So that's been really useful in that regard. However, another reason, one of the main benefits of this actually has happened in the last 2 weeks. So a few years ago, I came in on a Monday morning and one of our freezers had been off since sometime over the weekend. There was a big puddle of water on the floor and we had about £20,000 worth of wasted stock that we had to throw away. So yeah, we were able to claim on insurance and all that kind of stuff, although our insurance bill's gone up ever since. But the disruption that caused, because we had to then remake all of that, because that was product waiting to go out to customers the following week, so we had to quickly remake it all, and it was quite a massive disruption, to be honest. And obviously we had to reuse the energy. You don't get, when you do an insurance claim, you don't necessarily say, oh, can I have an extra grand towards my electricity bill, so I've got to make it all again. So there's all sorts of things like that. And our system previous to this was that someone would go around with a clipboard, with a probe, or to go into the different fridges, and we didn't bother taking measurements of ambient conditions in the production areas. We just did the fridges and freezers. And to be honest, those things were obviously it's necessary. We need to do that. It's a food requirement. It's a requirement for a food environment. But it's only when something went wrong, drastically wrong, that became useful. And because you're only measuring, say, every 2 or 4 hours, something can happen in between that time that you might not be aware of. What we have now is literally all the areas we're monitoring. We get every minute we get a reading coming in from that, and then we can go back and have a look at what happened. I'll have to be quick to run out of time, but a couple of weeks ago we had exactly the same situation happened, but because of a sensor that was about 150 quid or something like that, I get a message on my phone saying that freezer number 2 is out of specification. It's dropped. It's too warm. So we were able to come in. We got a couple of helpers came in and we moved all the products out of the freezer and put it into another freezer that had a bit of space in it. and then we were able to get the engineer in on the Monday or Tuesday to fix it. So that saved us exactly the same thing did it actually occur, and it saved us that. And then the other thing we're looking at the data, I can see now that one of our other fridges, our fridges are all quite old, you might have gathered from this, one of our other fridges is now on its way out, but I can see it from the data that it's going to go soon. So we've already started the maintenance on that one. So this is an example of the reading you'd get on your computer if you go with one of these kind of sensors. So you can see there that that fridge is mainly around 1 or 2 degrees. When it does a defrost cycle, it goes up to 5 degrees, but then you can see what happens on that occasion there. That's when this is a fridge rather than a freezer. This could be somebody's left the door open on the fridge or something silly like that. Well, that's the sort of data you get available to look at. So yeah, to me, that's really useful to know, especially when it's linked with an automatic alarm that just comes to your phone. So you don't have to monitor it all the time. You just wait until when you get a message on your phone, you know you've got to do something. And that's what this low-cost sensor introduction can give to you for whatever it is. This happens to be temperature, but I'm guessing it could be vibration. If you've got a machine that's got a bearing that's on its way out or something like that, there's all sorts of different things that you can do. So that's that one there. We're doing the same with energy. We are monitoring energy in a similar way. I don't think we've got time to go into it too much detail. If anyone wants to talk to me afterwards, please sort of, get my details and send me an email. We've saved a lot of money on energy. Even on those fridges, actually, we realized we were running them too cold. So we were able to, instead of running them at they needed to be minus 18. So we'll make it minus 22 just to make sure it never goes above minus 18. But we found we were actually able to drop the set point by a couple of degrees, still be within spec, and save ourselves some electricity. And hopefully we'll get a little bit longer out of the use of them. Yeah, that's it. Again, yeah, you see all sorts of nice diagrams with different things coming up here, but that's just basically our process flow on there. So we've got a digital production planning tool, which we're using as well. That was kind of one of the later phases as well. And this slide here is one of the last ones. You can see there it's got some automation and robotics. Those are now installed here, so what you do is putting an updated photograph of those in there. And so that's our next challenge now, is having the skills and ability to run a fairly complicated automated line. My staff, I haven't got any qualified degree people, engineers or anything like that, so that's one of the challenges that we're facing now, is how we're able to do that. On this slide, I think you're getting a copy of these, so hopefully some of this would be useful, but it's things like, instead of getting loads of paper records that just gather dust until we get an audit, we've now got digital records that we can look at whenever we want to. But you have to overcome some challenges. So some of the challenges that we've had, it's like, well, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So that also means you're never going to improve your business if you just take that approach. So I think we need to have a look at that. So in summary, I'd just like to say, please don't be afraid of the jargon. I highly recommend you get into it. Our customers are expecting it, and it helps you run your business more efficiently. Don't be afraid by the terminology, and certainly don't be afraid by these high-cost solutions, because you don't have to go straight in with a £500,000 robot installation. You can start off with a £100, £200 sensor, something like that. And the trick, I think, for us SME owners is to find the solutions that give you an immediate business benefit, but help you towards your longer-term goals, whether it's net zero or whatever it might be. But yeah, and you can, some of the £100 solutions give you a lot more return on your investment than some of the £100,000 solutions. But you look at the percentages and that kind of thing. Okay, folks, I could go on all day, but I think we're going to have some questions later on. So that's just a tiny little flavour for the sort of stuff we've been doing, and it has been most valuable. So anyone's got any questions, yeah, please do contact me later on. That's all good.
Thanks, Steve. We'll hand over to Lorna.
Hi there. Thanks for that, Steve. Hopefully, some of this information you've had today maybe inspires you to apply for some of this support. So I'll just talk you a little bit through the application process. So to access the Food and Drink TechHUB support program, there's kind of 2 stages to it, which can be accessed via the Highlands and Islands and Enterprise website. There's a QR code here on the screen, which you can scan with your mobile camera, and you'll be able to directly access the expression of interest form. Once you submit your expression of interest, your application would then be discussed by a review group, and if your application is eligible, you'll be invited to submit a full application. There's a few requirements around who can apply. In terms of business and social enterprises, you have to, I think Alistair touched on this earlier, you have to be based in the Highland Council area and also be an SME that is directly creating food and drink products. These can be primary and value-added processing and manufacturing, or you can even be part of a supply chain that supports these industries. Examples could be like harvesting, packaging, logistics. And then if you are interested in grant support, then one of the requirements is you've just got to be trading for at least 12 months. The QR code will appear again at the questions and answer stage, so don't worry if you didn't catch it there. I went on and talked about that slide. Sorry, the business and social enterprises, yes, you have to be operating in the council. I forgot to say to Iqbal there to move on slides. You have to be in the council area, be an SME that's created food and drinks, and also be part of the supply chain process in this as well. And for grant support, be trading for at least 12 months. Next slide, Iqbal. So hopefully after a successful application through Highlands and Islands, they would pass on your contact details to ourselves, and we would make contact with you. There'll be a small amount of admin that perhaps we'd go through with you, and then we would engage you first of all with a baseline questionnaire. It wouldn't be too overly complex. It'd be just something we'd be asking you to fill out that wouldn't take long, really trying to establish the baseline of your current digital capabilities. We might ask you about things like internet connectivity or existing technologies and your integration in operations. We'd also maybe try and cover some of the digital challenges you're experiencing and to help us understand barriers to technology adoption, perhaps budget, skills, or even some concerns around security. And lastly, there'd be some questions around what are your future aspirations in terms of technology adoption. Perhaps you've already got some ideas of how you'd want to adopt technology within your business. We'd follow up, previous slide, we'd follow up with a site visit and a consultation with yourselves that would allow us to work with you a bit on a deeper level to understand some of your challenges. These could be, for example, getting into some of the bones of bottlenecks that you might be experiencing, some of the manual processes. As Rhys mentioned, aging workforce can be a problem if there's a lot of manual processes in your business. And also, again, better understand some of your aspirations and going through perhaps a wish list of some kind of technology adoption you already have in mind, that hopefully you've got some ideas there from Iqbal and Steve. And lastly, what we would use all this information to create a technology adoption plan. And Steve did make a very good point there about being intimidated by a lot of jargon. And that's one of the key things that we would hope to deliver is an adoption plan that is meaningful in plain language, being able to give you a plan that you can realistically take forward, which would have things like your business needs analysis, the specific technology recommendations, return on investment projections to understand the real feasibility of it, and how it could pan out, and around projected impact perhaps that would be very business specific. You might be interested in net zero or growth or improving efficiencies. And we tie off with some information on relevant funding opportunities and additional support. Next slide, that's where we can open to some questions. Again, there, the QR code can be used if you want to add the link, and I can also see Laura's put the link in the chat. Oh, the application process down. Oh, there's the good that we've got the link. Does anybody have any questions on any of the speakers today? I think one of the possible questions that we were thinking of would perhaps be around people not having enough time. And that's something that obviously is a big consideration. I know everybody's very busy in their day-to-day operations, and thinking perhaps that engagement with this would take a lot of time. And I'm sure maybe Iqbal could expand on this, on how much time it is taken engaging with some of the businesses in Wales.
That's a good point, Lauren. I think a lot of the businesses that we work with, the minimum investment was roughly about 45-minute Teams call initially, and if there was a site visit, then it'd be another 1 hour, 2 hours on site just to look around the kind of production facilities. That that on-site visit just gave a lot of context, allows you to visualize the site rather than just over a Teams call, so it's extremely valuable. So I think overall maybe 2 to 3 hours tops, spread over several weeks. Is not all in one go. You don't need to take a half day out of the business, for example. So definitely encourage people to apply and not get concerned about the technology, the jargon, and certainly don't get put off by the time that you need to invest. Is very minimal. Okay, if there's no further questions, Alistair, do you want to finish off?
Yes, thank you very much for that. Very interesting. Yeah, I would just encourage any businesses out there that are interested in looking at new technology to then please apply for the support that's available. It's very good. It's completely free. You'll get an expert to come into your site and work with you. And then I think one of the advantages of this as well is there's funding at the end of the day. I think a lot of other areas in Scotland and the UK are jealous of the fact that there's funding available. So once you have had the audit and worked with intelligence consultant to understand what the plan is, there is finance available from High to actually invest in the equipment, and up to 40% of that could be covered by High. So I think it's a great opportunity, and would encourage anybody who's interested to get in touch. I think the link now has been added to the chat, so please use that link. I'll send out the link as well at the end of the with the slides and today or tomorrow, and you can see that. Just before we finish, I'm going to quickly share my slides. There is a couple of upcoming activities I wanted to mention, just in case anybody was interested. The first one of these is we are doing a Food and Drink TechHUB packaging clinic. So this is a free online clinic designed to help you navigate the complex world of packaging. It's going to take place on Thursday, 27th of February, between 9:30 and 12:30. Just like we said, it's open to Highland Council area businesses working in the food and drink sector, where you'll be able to see bespoke advice from a panel of packaging experts. So basically, it's a virtual clinic offering personalised guidance through a 20-minute one-to-one session with our team of specialist consultants. So basically, you send in some information beforehand about your business and some of the packaging questions or packaging issues that you have. The panel will do some research beforehand and then be able to give you some real bespoke support. So it could be things like the best packaging solution for your products, guidance on sourcing sustainable, biodegradable or recyclable materials and packaging, advice on environmental considerations for packaging, and then tips on things like packaging design, labeling, and some of that have on influence on consumer behavior. We've ran a couple of these before. They've been really, really popular. So if you are interested, please apply, and you can scan that QR code there, and that'll take you straight to the Eventbrite listing, and you can register. There's only 6 spaces available, so it is encourage you to apply now. It went live today. So when registering, I say please provide details about your business and your packaging challenges. This will really help our experts give you the best possible advice. Once you register, then we'll allocate you one of the 20-minute slots between 9:30 and 12:30, and then you'll get that one-to-one support that can be useful. Just to also say, I mentioned earlier, we have our podcast, which is called Food and Drink Business Bites. It's available. There's now 11 episodes of the podcast available. So if you are interested in finding out more about the fantastic food and drink that's an offer from the Highlands, some of the exciting work that we've carried out, some interviews with some really interesting people, then please do have a listen. You can get the podcast in all your usual podcast systems that you use. And yeah, as I say, the 11th episode is just out now. That is on market insights and involved a couple of really interesting interviews as well. And there's going to be the 12th episode is going to be released in the next couple of weeks, which is on our in-vessel composting common interest group, and that will be released shortly. And then the QR codes there if you want to get access to them through the web page. Also have our feedback form. We'd be delighted if you could spend just 2 minutes giving us some feedback, what you thought of today, any other thoughts on future events that we could be running. We're going to be doing for another 15 months or so of activity where we'll do a lot more webinars and workshops and one-to-one support. So delighted to hear what you think and anything else you think we could be doing. So thank you very much. That's this webinar now finished. I just want to thank our speakers for their presentations and also thank you for attending. As I say, I'll be sending an email out either today or tomorrow with the slides from today and with a link to where you can apply if you're interested in the technology advice service, and you can fill in the expression of interest. Also, we'll be making a recording. We've recorded this, so that will be available soon as well. It'll be available on the TechHUB website. So if any of your colleagues want to watch, or if anybody hasn't been able to attend, then you can please watch it there when it is available. So thank you very much. Thanks for your time, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Thank you.